Hey y'all, it's Michael and these are my favorite books that I read in 2016. Let's get started. I narrowed it down to 16 books. It was really difficult. I wanted this list to reflect my reading year essentially because I did unfortunately had to knock down some of the books. My previous years that I've been doing this, like my top favorite books of whatever year it is, of those years really reflected me as a reader, and I'm hoping to do that with this list. So first I wanted to start off with some honorable mentions. First honorable mention that I wanted to mention is Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry by Mildred D. Taylor, narrated by Lynn Thigpen with a word by Jacqueline Woodson. The reason why I didn't put this on my top 16 is because if I read it for the first time this year, it definitely would have. I read this the first time when I think it was like middle school, elementary, around that time. It was definitely when I was like a young reader for sure. And I just remember enjoying it so much. There's this one part in the whole story that I just was like, I remember it so much, like it's still ingrained in my mind. When that part came up, listening it to again, like as an adult, I was like, oh my god, this is so cool. This book is about the Logan family. It's like a trilogy. I haven't read past this book. I should probably do that. But this is about the Logan family. We mainly follow Cassie, and it's basically like a coming of age story within the South as she grows up with her family. It is incredible. The other one I want to have an honorable mention for is The Good Negress by A.J. Verdell. I really enjoyed this novel. It's about the niece moving to Chicago, and the story like jumps around so much because it's almost as if it's like a stream of consciousness almost with the niece just telling you like what's going on. The relationship between the niece and her grandma, I just really enjoyed those moments, and I just really love the niece as a character. The other one I wanted to mention is, as an honorable mention, is The Color Purple by Alice Walker. This is such a great novel. This is an epistolary. It's basically diary. It's letters essentially. The main character is mainly Celie, and it's just about her writing, and I really enjoyed it. Yeah, I just wanted to mention it, like an honorable mention. It was like so close. Like I'm telling you, narrowing these down to 16 is really difficult. Let's get started. Here are my 16 favorite books that I read in 2016. Let's count it down. Number 16 is The Lions of Little Rock by Christine Levine, narrated by Julia Whelan. This is about Marley who meets Liz during 1958. Yeah, 1958, because in 1957, this takes place in Little Rock, Arkansas. In 1957, the ruling started for the integrations of schools. During this time, the Little Rock Nine made huge news headlines on the news, and so Little Rock basically shut down their whole school system because of this. It really created a lot of racial tensions in that city. Marley and Liz are completely opposite characters. Marley is like really quiet. She's really shy. Like when I say shy, she's really shy. And Liz is the complete opposite of that. She's like outspoken, headstrong. She's not afraid to like say how she feels. And this is basically about these two girls developing a friendship. So Marley and Liz attend an all-white school, and then rumors start flying that Liz is actually not white, that she is passing. Back during these racially intense times, people would pass off as white, like their skin tone was light enough that they were passing off as white. They can be treated equally, just like white people. And what I really enjoy about this novel is that while it is middle grade, this book does not shy away from these heavy topics of racism. These are topics that I think are really important for kids to learn. It creates actually a lot of tension, and it raises the stake. Like the stake for these girls' friendship is really high, and it gets really intense. There are parts where I was like, oh my god, like someone's gonna die. Like it's really good in the way that it's building up this tension. Number 15 is Blackboard by Richard Wright. This is a memoir by Wright. This spans from his childhood growing up in the South all the way to, it's like he's almost in his 30s almost. My only one little gripe about this is the last part. It feels so different from the beginning, middle, and the beginning of the ending. It taught me right as a person because I really saw how his life affected his other novel that I read this year, Native Son. He almost projected his life almost on Native Son, the story of his life, but it's just so wonderfully written. Like there were parts in here where he does this thing where he would list things, like he would basically it was like almost synonyms to one thing, and it was so beautifully flowy and just it's written so well. I really love this. Number 14 is The Boys in the Boat, 9 Americans and Their Epic Quest for Gold at the 1936 Berlin Olympics by Daniel James Brown, narrated by Edward Herman. This is a nonfiction about the University of Washington rowing team during the 1936 Olympics. It talks about like the science of rowing, the philosophy of rowing, ideology between like their teamwork. Really enjoyed this. It's like this underdog sports drama, but it happened for real, and it's fascinating, it's intriguing, and just it's so good. Number 13 is It by Stephen King. Oh my god, this is heavy, so I'm gonna put this down and just put the screen right here, but look at it. This is essentially about a group of friends in this small town called Derry. From the works that I've read and listened to by Stephen King, I think this is one of his best. First off, it's really creepy, which I enjoyed so much. I did get scared because I actually read some parts of this like on my phone at night in the dark before I went to sleep, which was the worst idea ever because clowns are scary. Legit, you guys, clowns are scary. One timeline is what happens in the past when they were a kid, and then what's going on right now in the present. And I really love these two timelines going in with each other because it really works effectively on how King tells this story. It's so great. It does everything that I expected a Stephen King novel to do, and I think that's why I really enjoyed it because the ride and the destination in the end was worth it. Like even though this book is so huge, it's worth it. Like the journey and the destination, I really enjoyed it. I would recommend it. Number 12 is One Soul by Ray Fox. This is a graphic novel. I've mentioned this before, I think, in one of my videos, that plays on the 9-panel structure on how a comics is presented. This is essentially about one soul living 18 lives, drawn so minimalistically, it's like in black and white. It's one of the most thought-provoking media that I've ever read or experienced, because the graphic novel can be read in multiple ways. The way it made me think was so insightful, and I was like, wow. After I finished it, like the first time, I read it a different way. I was like, you can get the story changes depending on how you read it. If you're not that used to graphic novels, I wouldn't actually recommend this. I would recommend this if you're actually like, if you've read a lot of graphic novels or comic books and you're wanting something different. This takes the media of this structure that comics has followed for quite a while, and it really does something different. I'm filming. Am I loud? I am? It's late at night and people are sleeping, but whatever. Number 11 is Confessions by Kanae Minato, translated by Steven Snyder, narrated by Elena Eric Davis and Noah Galvin. I was actually recommended of this book from Deja from Twitter. Thank you, Deja. It was like a buddy read almost. This is like a thriller-ish novel from Japan. First off, I would have to say that it is incredibly Japanese, which I love so much, because a lot of the symbolisms and like what it talks about really hones down on Japanese culture. This is about Muragochi sensei. She's basically a teacher, and on the last day of class, like they were drinking milk. Like you pass out milk to your students in the classroom, like you actually eat in your classroom type of thing. She starts talking about what happened 4 years ago to her 4-year-old daughter, and her 4-year-old daughter was actually murdered, and she announces that she knows who done it, and that that person is actually in her class. When I tell you, I was like, wait, what? It's over the top. Because a lot of the events that happened, I was like, for me anyways, it really is really good at like making me suspend disbelief, because the way it unfolds, it switches perspectives, and the way that it's so thrilling trying to figure out what essentially happened. I don't want to talk about it too much because it might give it away. And the audiobook of this is fantastic. Number 10 is, I think would be a pretty controversial pick, but is OneQ84 by Haruki Murakami, and it's translated by Jay Rubin and Philip Gabriel. I did a whole talk about this during the summer. I'll link it down below like usual. I know Murakami's such a polarizing author. I think it's like a common thing, because I've experienced a lot of his novels now, and the way he treats women is not always in the best light. I should probably do a whole video on that. I keep telling myself I should probably do it as I read more of his novel. But it's a dual perspective. It's basically about Tango and Ayomane. It's magical realism. It gets really bizarre, but it covers themes and topics that I see a lot of Japanese media cover. I recently listened to a collection of his short stories, which was When the Elephant Vanishes, and there were some statements in there that made me like, what? But I really don't know what it is about Murakami. I think what I really enjoyed about his novels in general is that this feeling that I get, the experience of reading his novels is so airy and magic. The experience for me anyways of the act of reading his novels is so different from any novelist. When I read, and I read a lot of books, really makes me feel different when I read his novels, and that's why I think I really enjoy them, even though I know that it's problematic. Number 9, and I think I'm gonna cut this video in half because it is really long, is More Happy Than Not by Adam Silveira, narrated by Ramon de Ocampo. The book is about Aaron Soto. It's basically during like the summer-ish. It's a coming of age story where he meets this guy named Thomas, and so he starts developing these feelings for Thomas, and so he's like, am I gay? Like he's asking himself these questions of his sexuality. But then there's this moment where in the middle, I was like, what? What I think I really enjoy about this book is that it really steers the reader in a direction that I myself was not expecting, because I was genuinely surprised, and I really enjoyed that. The surprise of it was, one of my book club members was actually talking about, me and her was talking about this book, and she was saying that she didn't like Aaron as a character, and I was like, oh, okay, I could see that, because Aaron is really like a teenager. He acts very similar on how teenagers acts. I don't know if that makes sense, but I also really enjoy. I was telling her, I was like, I love characters like that. I love people that make the mistakes. I love characters that they're definitely not perfect, because Aaron is definitely not perfect. So yeah, those are my honorable mentions and books 16 through 9. I'll finish the rest in another video. Until then, I'll see you guys on the next one.